Welcome to the Jack Duffley Show, a weekly podcast exploring investing, real estate, the markets, law, technology, and everything in between. Here's your host, Jack Duffley.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Good to have you here with me today. I know it's been a long time since I've done an actual proper episode of the Jack Duffley Show. I apologize. I've been very busy with finishing up law school and also ramping up content on the YouTube channel, and I'm also doing some Facebook exclusive videos as well, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. That's my page, which is just my name, Jack Duffley. So facebook.com, I think /Jack Duffley is all you need to type in, and you can get to that page, and be sure to hit the like button there. And as always, I'd like to ask everyone, if you haven't already, to leave a 5-star review on iTunes if you happen to like this podcast, since that will help the show to get out to more people so more people can enjoy this content and more like-minded folks who are interested in finance topics and topics around the finance area could actually get into it as well. But without further ado, let's get into today's episode. So with me today is Trae Robrock. He is a fellow YouTuber and serial entrepreneur of sorts. He has a successful startup that he helped found in Green Bits. We'll certainly be talking a lot about that on this show. But before we get into that, Trae, if you want to let our listeners know a little bit more about yourself and I guess how you got here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am generally just an entrepreneur, YouTuber, I guess. I don't know when you can call yourself a YouTuber, but I spend a lot of time in my day doing YouTube stuff. Like you said, started a successful startup. Have been in startups pretty much my entire career and love the idea of making more money and finance in general.
That's a fair take. And I give you permission to call yourself a YouTuber, since I try to call myself a YouTuber and you got more subs than me. So I guess that counts if we're using that as a benchmark. But tell us a little bit more about this startup that you're in now, or I know you're kind of have more of a passive role now, but certainly a big shareholder still. Tell us a little bit about what that is, what the company does, and how you got to the point where you're at today as a company.
Yeah, so about 6 or 7 years ago, the co-founder of the company I started my career with, who also now just so happens to be my brother-in-law. No, not brother-in-law. He's my wife's cousin. Met my wife through that job. But anyways, him and I were trying to find something new to start, and we landed on the cannabis space of all places. So we started a software company that was building point of sale software for the legal cannabis industry. We launched alongside Washington State's recreational market back in 2014, I believe it was July of 2014, if I remember right. And just grew it from there. And it was a crazy ride. At our peak, we were like 100 employees across 2 offices. And it was really insane. I was the CTO of the company, so I ran all of its technical side. And yeah, it was crazy. I haven't been there for about 1.5 years now. I left there a while back to kind of let things go without me and see what was next for me.
So what is next? Do you have any idea? You certainly have some sort of goal in mind, I'm sure. What made that decision happen?
Yeah. I got into like a bit of a weirdish headspace, I think. I had a long time goal of becoming CTO of a startup by the time I was 30, and I'd achieved that. And then the next 5 years or so was just entirely heads down on actually getting that startup to be something of a success. And then after that, I didn't really have like any clear goals past that. So I think I kind of stumbled in a slightly weird headspace. I started playing a lot around with YouTube. This is when I started a lot of my YouTube things, doing like random daily vlogs and stuff like that. And just trying to figure out where I was going. And I think part of me felt I needed to step away to even figure out what that was going to look like, which I think was true and worked out pretty well. What the next thing is kind of a bunch of things. So I'm digging real deep into real estate investing, starting to build out businesses around that, even working on a couple of software things related to it. I work with 1 or 2 startups, sort of helping do product development and advice and things like that there. Also always on the lookout for another startup idea. And of course, YouTube is probably my like number 2 or number 3 thing that I spend time on in a day.
And you could definitely call the YouTube channel a startup in itself. But could you take me back to when you were at Greenbits, the startup that you left, you said a year and a half ago. Could you take me through kind of a day in the life of trying to build that company and technically still building it? It's a young company by relative standards. What did a day in the life of Trae Robrock look like when he was in the middle of this startup?
Yeah, so day in life changed a lot from day one to the end of the 5 or 6 years. Early on, it was just 3 to 5 of us in total, and we just were getting together and building the thing and talking to customers all the time. And so it was just like heads down building things. As we started to grow the product and engineering team, I spent a lot more time learning about management and how to manage people, especially people with many differing personalities and across different locations and backgrounds and cultures. And it was quite the learning experience for me. So a lot of my days there, and you can see sort of some of the progression actually in a lot of my vlogs from the early days, which I refuse to take down, where I would just be meeting after meeting after meeting, lots and lots of hiring and interviews. So like my days were very, very talking with people and meeting heavy towards the end.
Was there a particular challenge that you consistently faced that you were always trying to overcome? Maybe you did eventually overcome it, but was there like a main challenge you were always focusing on?
Yeah, my personality.
Elaborate, please.
I've never naturally been like a people person, and I'm I tend to be very blunt and can be abrasive, and that's very difficult in a manager position. So learning a book that was really impactful for me was Radical Candor, which I think gets a bit of a bad rap to it, but it taught me a lot about empathy and learning about empathy and what it is and how to understand it and how to learn it and how to use it. And that I think made a big impact. Probably too little too late in that situation, but it's definitely had a big impact on me going forward.
And could you tell me a little bit more about that book? I'm actually not familiar with Radical Candor. Who wrote it and what's it about exactly?
Cheryl, the Facebook.
Right.
Facebook.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. You know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't. Her name's like slipping me right now, but it's Radical Candor. It's a big book in the startup space, and I say it kind of got a bad rap because a lot of people use Radical Candor as an excuse to just be mean, which is very much not what the book is about. It kind of talks about the different personality types, not like a one of those personality type tests, but like a varying quadrant from like just complete aggressive, no empathy side to the other side, which is so empathetic it's not even empathy anymore. It's just sympathy and won't speak your mind, and then trying to figure out how to get in the balance there, like having empathy and being able to be direct and honest by using empathy in your conversations, which was probably the biggest thing that I took away from it, was learning how to have those direct conversations, but see it from the other side.
So that was the big thing that was a challenge for you consistently. It was trying to approach your team essentially, and obviously keep people on board and being approachable at the same time while also being firm and direct, which is a never-ending balancing act. But if that was your biggest challenge, what was kind of your biggest forte, your biggest trait that you brought to the team that you just loved doing and really were able to provide a ton of value up front while you were learning these other skills?
And that's a hard one. Nothing felt like it was easy. I think I'm pretty good and pragmatic product engineer, which I brought that and building out the initial product. And I think we built something with a pretty good base to it. I think one of my strengths in this business particularly was my accounting sort of knowledge and business background. I went to college for business. So I know a bit about that, and I've always been interested in it. And I think like that mixed with the product and engineering development is always probably been one of my biggest strengths. But like I said, when you're starting a startup like this, nothing really seems easy. So
Sure.
it's hard to really say.
I should also ask, how big was the team? Was it a larger team? I'm assuming it was kind of smaller, at least at the start.
Yeah, so we grew the company from 3 people. It was me, my friend Andrew, Ben, who was the co-founder of the company before. We grew it from 3 to, I think we peaked out at like 105 or something like
Wow.
that.
How rapid was that rise? That had to be intimidating at some point, if it's still not intimidating.
Yeah, we stayed very small for the first like 2 to 3 years. So like our engineering team, well, the whole company was like 8, maybe
Wow.
2.5 years in. And then from there, it like ramped up really quickly. We grew really heavy on the sales and support and onboarding side of things. So that was mostly in Portland, like our customer service division effectively. That was more than half the company. Our product and engineering grew less rapidly, but we did end up getting to be like 20 to 30 people on the engineering team, which was, a large team to be running.
And in the cannabis space specifically, there's a lot of state-to-state issues, clearly, and that's been a rapid change in itself. Was it kind of growing with states allowing it? So as more states were added into this union of allowing cannabis, was your sales team growing with that, or was it all strictly very regional in regions you were already in before more states started adding it?
Yeah, a little bit of both. But yeah, as more states added, we grew more. Our strength and the real like benefit our product provides is we sort of automate all the uniqueness of the various states and their regulatory systems. So the fact that they're all different is actually really good for us. So like we kind of manage a lot of those things. So as states came online, we'd have to learn about all those things, understand the nuances of selling into those stores. Like, for example, in Washington, it's not legal to sell anything by weight. Like you can't go and buy 1.73 grams, for example. But in Oregon, the state right next door, you can. So like we have to build a product that doesn't let them do the things that are illegal. It's the same product across everything, but then kind of keeps the retailer protected. And then our sales team needs to understand these nuances to be able to answer the questions that they have. Onboarding needs to know how to set up all of the systems so that they get configured correctly. Support needs to know how to answer the questions. Like it was scaling was a nightmare because of these differences, but it was also the value we provided.
I'd imagine you'd have a lot of legal compliance in there too. So how'd you navigate that?
We actually didn't really have any.
Really?
We had very little to no legal liability. Because it was all on the license holder, which was the customer.
Oh, I see.
We obviously didn't, play things fast and loose, and we're like, well, it's all up to them. We did everything we could. When I did leave, we did have 1 or 2 people doing sort of legal analysis, but most of that was like, I spent a lot of time. I read through every single word of the Washington state law that went into effect to understand that when we first launched. So a lot of it was me and Ben just understanding all of the various states. And then like most of the states copy each other on bits and pieces, and they just assemble them in different pieces. So it's kind of like Legos, like you've seen this one thing in this one state and it looks pretty much the same as this in the other state, but they have 2 other Legos attached to it also.
Yes, legal Legos. I kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly.
States do copy each other a lot. So surely you had some sort of bump in the road outside of like personal challenges you might have been facing that everyone's going to face at some point. Did the company ever face like kind of a crisis early on while you're trying to grow that you had to address? And if so, how'd you address it?
Yep. We reached a point that I think a lot of startups reach where we were trying to grow faster than we could maintain. So we started to run into a lot of errors and things like that on reporting to the state governments while also trying to continue to push forward. And, I think a large amount of overconfidence, especially on my side, on the product side, and being able to handle that, that severely affected our growth, and something that like the team still works on getting better at today. And it's sort of the age-old question of fixing bugs versus building new things. And that was a real challenge there. Led to a decent number of stability issues that we spent a long time hammering out and sort of pulling things back and getting on top of and pushing forward from there. But that was a rough like year or two, probably.
So it sounds like the solution was to kind of scale back on the throttle and tighten up in a way. Am I characterizing that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. You have to, you can only run as fast as your shoes can hold you.
Of course.
Is a horrible analogy, but if your shoes are falling apart, you can't run very fast. And if you keep trying to run, it'll fall apart more. And that's very much the situation we're in. So we had to slow down our run to fix our shoes to continue the horrible analogy.
On a similar analogy is like with running on a treadmill and you're turning up the treadmill really, really fast and you might land on your face if you go too fast. Yep. Yeah, so maybe upgrading your legs to run faster. I don't know. It's still kind of cheesy, but so now that you're not in the wheat, wow, this is a really, really interesting
the whole industry is full of just amazing puns. I mean, it's a real budding industry.
Yeah, it is. And now that you're no longer in the weeds with it, you mentioned that you're trying to figure out what's next. You're working on this YouTube channel. What's your goal with that? Is this some sort of parlay into another startup? Do you have anything like on kind of your short-term to medium-term radar?
Yeah, so the two things that are definitively moving forward with me right now are the real estate business and the YouTube channel. I really enjoy the YouTube channel a lot and providing sort of unique opinions on finance there. Like startup and angel investing are not something most people are very familiar with. And then just in general, I think like there's a high level of risk intolerance in finance that I'd like to sort of push on the other side of. Maybe we can land in a nice balance. So that's one big thing that I really spend a lot of time on and thinking about and trying to grow. Also just YouTube in general is a fascinating platform to try and learn how to grow there. It's like a big game. And then the real estate side of things, I want to grow that pretty large. We're closing on our second property now. 2021 goals are to have 5 single family homes and 1 vacation rental in Florida by the end of the year and just continue growing that. And then I'm constantly on the lookout for either companies that I can like be a large investor / part owner in, an advisor, or an idea that I can found myself.
Yeah, we talked about at least on your real estate portfolio, then your portfolio with your investment in your startup and others. Back on my YouTube channel a while, we each looked at each other's portfolios and did kind of a commentary on our respective channels. So go check that out if you guys haven't already. Both on our YouTube channels. Our YouTube channels are just our names, so easy to find. So is your longer term strategy then to have a portfolio of a ton of different angel investments and startups? Is it to have a bunch of real estate, or is it just kind of a medley of all of those things and you're trying to balance it in some way?
Yeah, it's kind of all those things. Though my sort of investment strategy is invest my time and money in the things that I'm really passionate about and can have a good return. And right now that's real estate and startups that I care the most about. So angel investing is something very interesting to me. I really like the idea of being able to help other fellow entrepreneurs like navigate their way through growing a startup and sort of maybe hopefully avoiding some of the problems that we ran into. So that's very interesting to me. It's also, incredibly lucrative. It's also very risky, but it's not a problem for me. I have a high risk tolerance, and like they're all calculated risks,
Of course.
I think I just have a higher risk tolerance in general than the average person. And then real estate is, I don't know. I think that's just a fascinating business too. And I definitely approach that from a sort of big business mindset. Like I don't intend that to be like 10, 20 properties and we're done. Like I intend that to be a lot more. I don't even know how many, but
sure,
grow that basically as big as we possibly can.
You've got your rental portfolio that you've started now, and you're clearly well on your way to having many more properties. You have your startup investments. You're looking for more investments. You have your YouTube channel. How do you stay on task? Like, what does your daily routine look like in trying to manage all these things and stay on focus? Because I'm sure that's becoming a bigger challenge because you have more tasks all going on at once. So how do you keep it all organized?
I am one of those people that does better with a lot of different things going on. Gary Vee always says this. He says this thing in one of his talks that I always really clicked with. He's like, I'm one of those people that, there's a lot of people that would rather, like, they would juggle 3 balls and they never drop any. And Gary's like, I'm one of those people that would rather have like 17 balls in the air and be okay dropping 5 of them. And that's very much where I'm at. Is I would rather have like too many things going on and drop a few. And that definitely happens on a day-to-day basis with me. I work on like 3 or 4 different consulting projects, the real estate business, YouTube, my main salaried job, and like 1 or 2 side projects in a day, pretty much every day. So like some of those will drop. There's some weeks where I won't work on any of those consulting gigs, and then they get a little behind, and maybe I drop them, maybe I don't. So my daily routine is not super structured. There's just, I'm very passion driven, which sounds really lame, but it's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. You're filling it up to the max. And in that way, you always know you're doing basically the most you can, because
and I'm not one of those people that works very well off of a to-do list. I do them sometimes, just to make sure I get certain things done. Like I have a pretty decent like content calendar and to-do list for the YouTube, because like I have deadlines that I want to meet there. But the want word there is key. Like if I felt like I had to meet it, but I didn't want to, I just would stop doing it. That's where you get those big gaps in my channel history. It's like, I just wasn't passionate about it anymore. So I stopped doing it. So like I typically wake up around 5 o'clock every day. I come downstairs, just the basement where my office is here. And I work until about 7. Some days that's just like catching up on a bunch of YouTube, which for the most part, I consider research into my YouTube channel or real estate investing or other investing, things like that. Or I'll be working on another project. Sometimes I'll record a YouTube video, though I haven't been able to figure out how to get my energy up that early in the morning to make a good YouTube video. And then I'll hang out with my kids from 7 to 8. And then at 8 o'clock, I get back to work. Most of like the first big chunk of the day is focusing on my salaried job, getting all the stuff done for that I need to get done. And then it's kind of just like wherever I'm most interested that day, I land. Sometimes like that'll be working on this real estate software that I don't even know if it'll turn into a thing. Sometimes that'll be working on one of my contract projects. It's really like just where I'm most excited to work. And then I just jump between things like that.
So it's almost like the earlier part of the day is going to be a lot more structured. And then from there, you're flexible based on whatever's going on. I think that makes a lot of sense given how much you're juggling, and you ultimately will not be able to fit everything.
I always make sure my salaried job comes in very early, because it's the thing I want to do the least. And if I push it towards the end, I just won't do it.
That's kind of where I'm at I'm wrapping up law school, as we've talked about on your podcast, actually, just a few days ago. So check out the Financial Literates. That's Trae's podcast that he does with one of his business buddies, Justin, another YouTuber. So go check that one out. But yeah, same thing for me with law school. It's like, man, I don't want to do this at the end of the day when there's all these other things that I want to do that I've thought about through the day. While my mind's clear in the morning, I really want to jump, as I think Mark Cuban puts it, you want to jump on the frog and just finish it quickly, as opposed to letting it linger through the day as your mind becomes less focused and you have other tasks to do. So I can resonate with that for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Trae, one question I like to ask every single one of my guests is if you have a book recommendation, it can be in any genre. It doesn't have to be business related, but if you had any book recommendation that you could give, I know you already mentioned Radical Candor. If it happens to be that one, then great. But if there's another one you'd want to recommend, why don't you let us know now?
Yeah. Radical Candor is a good one. The books that I most commonly recommend, 4-Hour Workweek, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Those were 2 of the most impactful books for me, sort of opening my eyes to this world of finance and financial independence. And I think there's some really great things in there. 4-Hour Workweek teaches a lot about automation and how valuable your time is. Rich Dad, Poor Dad taught me a lot about the mindset of sort of shifting your thinking from how can I to, or it's from can I to how could I?
Right.
And that's a very, very big mindset shift that was really impactful. And then for finance nerds, this is the one I mentioned to you last night, was the Wealth Management Index. Very good book for anyone that's really interested in finance. It's pretty dense, but it talks about things from leveraging credit lines to smooth out cash flow to asset protection and insurance. And it goes through all of the aspects of wealth management, which was really, really interesting read. And I'll probably be reading it again here soon, now that I've had like 6 months to a year to learn more from the last time I read it. And I think I'll pick out a lot more interesting pieces from it.
Those are the best books that you can return to once you have a few more experiences, and all of a sudden they provide a new level of value. I'll provide a link to all of those books in the description if you guys want to check those out. But lastly, Trae, if our listeners want to get in contact with you or learn more about you, where can they find you?
My website's probably the best central place to go. It's just TROBROCK.com, Robrock.com. It's got a link to my everything. YouTube is where I post the most stuff. Twitter's where I conversate the most. So those are probably the two best places to reach me. So that's probably the best place to go.
All right. And then with that, Trae, thank you very much for coming onto the show. It's been a pleasure doing all this content with you over the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure we'll have much more in the future. But again, thanks very much. And until next time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Jack Duffley Show. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss any new episodes. For more content on personal finance, real estate, and other topics, check out jackduffley.com.